So, hello, everybody. I welcome you today to our panel session. The topic is how lean transforms relationships to empower employees and increase impact. I welcome the audience today from all over the world. We look forward to your questions, and I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Bublu Takwo-Weigold. I'm the director of the Humanitarian Operations and Supply Chain Management Lab at the ETH Zurich. We are a technical and research university in Switzerland funded by the federal government, dedicated to supporting in the case of our labs, the performance and the service of humanitarian organizations. Today, our topic is how lean transforms relationships to empower employees and increase impact. I welcome the members of our panel today. I will briefly introduce them. So welcome everybody. We have Dr. Andrew Paris, who is the Process Excellence Manager at MEDAIR, the NGO MEDAIR, headquartered also in Switzerland. And then Dareen Nidhook. Dareen, I apologize for, please help me with your name. Dareen, Commodity Manager Food for the Hungry from the DRC. We have Abebe, Director for People and Culture at World Vision International. We have Elias Jakob, the Logistics and Security Manager, also from MEDAIR. And we have Robert Saka, Project Manager from the Ministry of Public Service of the Government of Uganda in Kampala. So we have practitioners and theorists who are expert and have expert experience in working with lean management in their organizations. And so they're here to share their experiences with us today and take your questions. But before we begin, this is a humanitarian leadership conference, and our panel is presented to you today in the spirit of improving performance. There's so many ways to look at humanitarian leadership. And you will probably be wondering why we as industrial engineers have joined your session today. We have come because we are working in the humanitarian sector that is faced with shrinking resources in resource poor environments to begin with, but our donor funding is decreasing at the same time as the demands on our programs and our activities and the need for humanitarian aid is increasing. This is obviously a conflict that we will have to face as we move forward. It's more than a conflict. The pressure is rising, the pressure to become more professional, accountable, visible, and performative in our work as we move forward. How do we do that? We can look to technology, we can look to many things, but one of the methods that has proven itself in the projects that our panel members will be showing to you is lean management that comes out of industry. So we're not going to be looking at how lean management helps us improve factory performance. We're going to be looking at how lean thinking improves the performance of humanitarian and nonprofit work, and in specific, how it changes the relationships among people within these organizations, and how these improved relationships and the deployment of the talent in these organizations increases their impact. So with that, I welcome you. I'm going to ask the panel to begin by asking Dr. Paris to explain what exactly lean is and why it's important based on your experience.
Thank you, Bublu. So lean can be described in a number of different ways, and I'll try and come at it at a couple different angles because I think they're all relevant. One way to answer the question, what is lean, is that lean is a management system developed by Toyota Motor Company over many years, 50 plus years, through trial and error, based on the idea that we can add more value to our customers, to those whom we're serving, by eliminating waste, by finding ways to prevent mistakes, by stopping and solving problems at the root cause, by making it easier to see where the problems are, and then pulling together people quickly to solve them at the root cause. Alternatively, lean can be seen as a way to make work easier, to make work better quality, to make it faster, to make it cheaper. Also as a way of reducing the burden on employees, the burden on people doing the work, caused by wasted resources, wasted time, energy, etc. So lean is a set of thinking, it's a set of tools. It's founded on respect for people, which I think is extremely important in humanitarian work, especially the topics we're facing these days. But it's building the capacity of people, drawing on their expertise, their understanding, their wisdom, their insight to make work better, to reduce, again, the burden, the waste, the frustration that we experience, and to make the workflow more smoothly and achieve greater impact. A couple quick examples. I know you'll hear some more, but lean is things like mapping and streamlining a procurement process from procurement to payment so that it happens more quickly. Lean is creating a standard operating procedure, for example, for shipping, to identify all the steps that need to be taken and make sure that they're not missed so that we can get things from one place to another as quickly as possible. Lean is, for example, when we know that we're going to get something into customs, preparing all the documents in advance so that as soon as the shipment arrives, we have all our papers ready and we submit those, and we get the delivery out of the airport as quickly as possible and into the areas where it's needed. Lean is also simply things like labeling in the kitchen area, common kitchen area, labeling the cabinets visually and with words too, so people who are new there can come in and see where to find things rather than having to open every little cabinet. It's a very even simpler thing of putting a colored rubber band on your electrical connector of your laptop, so when you go to pull it out of the power strip and there are 5 things there, you know immediately which one is yours. It's making work easier, making work faster, higher quality, and less expensive to make the resources go further and achieve greater impact.
So if I may ask a question there, Andrew, it comes from this kind of thinking and this kind of doing comes from the Toyota Motor Company. So really heavy manufacturing of big machines. And you're telling me that it applies to nonprofit and humanitarian work with these examples.
Yes.
So explain briefly, before we go and we ask our panel members, explain briefly how this impacts relationships. First of all, it sounds like a whole bunch of very, very small interventions at various levels of the work. How does this change relationships between people, and why should it?
Well, so the changes can be very small. They can also be quite significant, whether they're small incremental improvements, incremental innovations, or again, projects that take several months. It changes relationships because of this foundation on respect for people and relying on people. One of the interesting stories that I've heard, and I think really reflects well on the essence of lean. A manager's role in lean is to serve the people who are performing the processes, who are doing the work. So if a person makes a mistake in their work, the Japanese manager may say, "I'm sorry, we haven't provided you a good enough process that you can succeed in your work." So it's not blaming people, it's knowing that people want to do a good work and providing the system, a series of steps, a process to make that work happen as quickly and easily as possible. I'll stop with that for right now. But it really is, yeah, changing the relationship. And then, sorry, one more thing. It's also changing the relationship between the organization and the people whom they're serving. The purpose of an organization is to serve people, to provide value. And whether I'm internally serving another internal customer or I'm serving communities who are affected by crisis, it changes my focus on what I can get to what I can do for others and how I can help them.
Okay, that sounds very compatible with the humanitarian mission and many of the topics that are part of this conference. And so it isn't just something technical.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. I see our panel members also shaking their heads. So let's go straight to the real stories from the field. Even though Andrew, I know that you come from the field, you've spent, maybe you can give a few words on your background. You are here with a very formal education from an engineering university on lean management, and maybe you can explain where you gained this conviction that it works in a humanitarian environment, where you don't have an army of people in a factory. Do tell us where, something about your background.
Yep. Yeah. Briefly. So I earned my PhD in mechanical engineering at MIT with something called the Lean Aircraft Initiative. So very much this question, does lean apply outside of automobiles? Well, we were asking that back in the early 1990s. Does it apply to aircraft even? So that gap was a big question. The answer came back, certainly it does, and here's how, and that was the work that we did. But since then, I've worked in the aerospace industry, expanding the scope of application of lean. Then I joined World Vision and worked in World Vision for 9 years, applying lean and Six Sigma in World Vision. 3 of those years I did live in East Africa, so I've worked with all the East African countries in World Vision, streamlining processes, training. I actually didn't conduct any improvement projects. My entire role was training people, building up their capacity, and empowering them to make changes in the work that they do. And a handful of the people here are part of that work, and they will just tell you more about their experience.
Well, let's go straight to that. So I wanted to give the audience a chance to understand where you're coming from. Like I said, so this is definitely coming out of industry, but let's show the evidence in the field in our humanitarian work here. And I'm going to go through, like I said, our speakers here are distinguished speakers coming from various backgrounds. We have Elias coming from logistics and security, and we have Robert coming from a ministry in government, and we have Doreen coming from commodity management, and Abebe has broad experience as well. I'm going to call those on Robert to begin. First, Robert is from Uganda. Maybe you can give us an example, and all of our speakers have more experience than we could possibly go through today in our panel. So maybe, Robert, you can give us your most memorable and most impactful application of lean. And if you could explain it to us in the following way: if you could explain what the problem was, what the approach that you took, what the root cause of that problem was, and then the action that you took, so that we can follow your thinking. So I'm going to give the floor to Robert.
Yes, thank you so much, and good afternoon from Kampala. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you. And I think first of all is to give our listeners the perspective of the role of government in terms of humanitarian leadership. Government is a key humanitarian actor in provision of key services that are dependent on a number of humanitarian operations, notably in refugee registration, citizen registration, immigration control, and provision of security to nationals and humanitarian workers. And in doing that, certainly government has a duty to provide efficient and timely services, not only to the citizens of the country, but also to the humanitarian workers, to ensure there is equitable service provision to all key stakeholders, and most importantly, to ensure that there is transformation and people are able to return back to normal life because usually when there is a humanitarian operation, it's not business as usual, as many of us know. And therefore, government has a critical role to ensure that the operations are done in accordance with the law, but at the same time, they have a sense of community togetherness or impact to the community and the employees it serves. And as much as possible, as to give our viewers an opinion, I want to reflect on the role of government in ensuring that it has a productive workforce, but it also has a quality of life for people who have retired from the service. Who are the community members in where many of the humanitarian operations usually are taking place? And I want to reflect on the use of lean in streamlining government operations, but most importantly, on the payroll side of government, especially when it comes to payment of terminal benefits you can say to retirees or to former employees in order to maintain a motivated employee community, but at the same time improve relationships within the employees of government who are supporting humanitarian workers while they are still in service. Whereas I'm looking at the end of it, it is about the motivation for these employees to provide reliable service to support humanitarian operations, so that knowing that when they eventually leave, even as may not have gotten so much from government in terms of wage, in terms of salary, but at least they're assured of a good life when they leave. So in terms of government operations, many of the governments, including our government Uganda, lean is a new thing. Many of them have not thought about using lean and the benefits that Dr. Andrew has just highlighted. Having come from a background of use of lean in the NGO sector and joining government, I saw an opportunity where we could leverage lean to transform employee relations, transform employee productivity, transform process efficiency for government operations. And notably, in particular to this particular process of terminal benefits, it was taking averagely, you can say, 2.8 years for government of Uganda to pay employees as they retire. And that is extremely, yes, please. Sorry.
This is when employees retired from the government, they waited almost 3 years to get their first pension payment.
Exactly, and that communicates the level of frustration and the level of the motivation that employees would have. In so doing, it will have impact on humanitarian workers and humanitarian operations, because they're not sure of their quality of life even as they leave, because of the delay to pay them, of the delay to support them, and many of them will die before even accessing this money from government. And therefore, leveraging lean practices, we had to come up with a better approach, a better strategy to help government to improve the picture. Because that did not only impact on employee productivity and relations, but it also impacted on government image to provide quality and reliable services to the citizens. And in so doing, it impacted, indirectly impacts the operations of humanitarian workers. So using lean, we're able to map out the business process, look at the underground reliable issues that were pertaining to the process in terms of information required for the process to start, and who are the actors, and making sure that their roles and relationships in terms of task structure, in terms of roles and responsibilities were mapped out clearly. And at the end of the day, we were able to identify various wastes in the process, various variations that one institution of government will be able to pay in 1 year, but another is not able even to pay in 5 years, even when the government has allocated money to pay these employees as they retire. So in doing that, we are able to map out the business process, identify and simplify the process, remove the waste, reduce the number of handoffs, and reduce that the government was undertaking, but at the same time, review the government architecture of the entire end-to-end flow of information and data required to process terminal benefits. For our viewers or for our listeners on call, government is a complex structure having more than 280 district local governments operating all over the country. And it meant that every file that had to be worked on had to centrally come to Kampala at the headquarters of the ministry so that they are able to process. That posed a lot of logistical challenges. It posed a lot of delays. And in so doing, we had arising out of the lean process, we were able to fully decentralize the service, which helped to empower the employees, which helped to rebuild that lost trust, especially on behalf of the employees who are retiring, but most importantly, for government to be able to effectively use the resources when they're due. And that, in a way, has also reduced what we call domestic arrears for wage. And at the same time, we're seeing improved working relations. We're seeing improved productivity. We're seeing a happy community. And this is indirectly improving the services to humanitarian workers. Thank you for now.
Robert, we thank you for that compelling example. Can I summarize, please, what you've just explained to us? So you came upon a problem in government operations in which pension payments were made almost 3 years after the employee left the service of the government. And by making the workflow visible and working together and streamlining it and reducing the number of handoffs, you were able to reduce it from 3 years to how many years? How did
we were able to reduce it from 3 years averagely to now 1 to 5 days?
1 to 5 days, from 3 years
Exactly.
to 1 to 5 days. I want to just emphasize that for the audience, the scale of the impact that we are talking about here. So there was a real, and that this was possible, Robert, if I understand you correctly, without cost cutting. This was possible through simply logical changes in the process.
Yeah, this was possible without any major significant re-architecture of government or downsizing. And indeed, even as lean came into place, there was no replacement of staff, so there was no worry about staff losing jobs. But at the same time, it simplified the task. It simplified the clarity of the job so that everybody was clear about what they were to do, in how long, and who are the supporting agents in the process. In so doing, you can see that everybody, with the lean helping to reorganize the flow of the process, we were able to achieve much more, even within the existing resources of government. Of course, there were just a few improvements on the systems part of it, because to change the workflow within the systems, it had to align to the new approval channels, which are largely streamlined, and because of Lean and Six Sigma techniques that we're able to leverage.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I think it's very important to understand if you reduce a delay from over 3 years to a few days, less than a week, which is a remarkable improvement, that it was not done by reducing headcount, but simply by these reorganizations that you mentioned. And the final outcome, yes, it hits humanitarian workers in Uganda are treated better by government, but you made limited resources go further. I think that is an important summary we want to give the panel. Thank you for that report from the field. So it works for government, for sure, in resource poor regions. Sounds like also a very inspiring and motivating project, Robert. That's something that you also mentioned. Elias, can we go over to Lebanon now that we've heard a little bit from Uganda? Andrew and I have been working with Elias for many years. And for our listeners out there in cyberspace at the conference, Elias has just come with a great deal of experience in the emergency response to the Beirut Blast, which took place last August, and is a very real crisis that is fresh in our memories. And Elias, maybe you can share your experience with that. I think the problems are well known. I don't think you always call it lean, but do tell us your experience with improving performance on the ground by transforming relationships, empowering employees, and how you increased impact.
Yeah, thanks, Bublu. And in August 2020, we didn't face only the Beirut Blast, which is a huge chemical blast. At the same time, the country was under lockdown due to a high number of COVID cases. We have high inflation rate, and the situation was really difficult. Lebanon is relying on importation, and the importation process was also affected due to the issues that were facing the country. And so that means lack of materials in country, because the importation currency is USD and there is lack of USD in country. This is a brief overview about the situation, and adding to that, the Beirut blast. So once the blast happened, it took us a few hours to know as emergency team to know what is the blast, what happened, and within a few hours we knew it's like a chemical blast, and there is a huge damage in Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. Directly, the senior management started the communication and the meetings to see the way that we want to respond and to help the beneficiaries or the people affected by the blast. So the approach was, okay, first, as an emergency response, we have to determine two main things, as the type and the level of the need. For that, we needed to get access to go to the field or to the area of the blast. So we worked with local NGO. And the second day or the day after, we went to the area of the blast along with other NGOs. We started cleaning and supporting cleaning the area. At the same time, we were doing our first assessment, which was door-to-door assessment, just to see the specific needs in the area. So we were doing supporting by cleaning and also supporting by doing the assessment. Why we started doing the assessment is that because we want to respond. So after the first assessment that we did, which is door to door, we had a bit of clear idea about the way that we want to respond. So we had two phases. The first phase is supply or distribute emergency relief kits, which was the shelter kits. And the second one is reconstruction. For the first one, we got the donation from UNHCR, which is the shelter kits, which help with weatherproofing. And this was really helpful at the beginning, at the first stage. So people, they could stay in their homes. And because to the damage, like almost there are no windows, nothing at all in the buildings. So they covered the windows and they felt they are a bit safe if their windows are closed. And also we distributed the hygiene and baby kits as donation from UNICEF. During the first phase, as logistically speaking, we started the preparation for the second phase, which is the reconstruction, taking into consideration the lack of materials, the monetary situation in country. So another assessment started. We developed an application on the phone, and also we worked with Lebanese Red Cross to continue further in the assessment, because we wanted to get a bit clear idea about the needs and also accurate numbers and accurate information. So we do our best to proceed in the reconstruction phase. So during the first phase, we were distributing vouchers for the beneficiaries that, based on the vouchers, they were collecting the needed kit. Same time, the logs department started contacting suppliers, our main suppliers, that they are qualified and they know what we wanted to know what they have in their stock. And also we were checking the availability of the items, mainly the glass and the Lebanese market. And also we checked the delivery lead time from the day that we order, because in case it's not available, for sure it will be imported. So we collected the information needed. Still, the issue is not yet solved, because the process that we have to respond is a bit long. That means we need to waive things. We need to get benefit from the time, so we can help as soon as possible, and we can reach out the beneficiaries as soon as possible.
Maybe, Elias, if I may interrupt you briefly, to pinpoint some of your decisions, because what you're describing here is an emergency response. Okay, and so the time is of the essence. I don't have to explain that to any humanitarian worker. You know, people were in need and in distress, and in grave danger in certain cases. So everything you've described sounds actually sort of like normal operations. Maybe you can explain how did the team, what made your response different from others on the ground? Because it seemed like there was a convergence of many organizations trying to do the same thing as you. Now, how did your sort of process thinking or your collaboration, what were the elements that made your response better, faster, more effective? Or was it, maybe you can emphasize those points for us?
I think here comes the lean, because it's continuous improvement. And when I say continuous improvement, and this was very clear, and the evidence is that when we started the first assessment door to door, we started improving our assessment. So we moved to
Who's we? Who's we?
We as the team, like working in the field. And when I say we as team, I mean, like, it's not only the field team that they were supporting the assessment or supporting the response in the field. So there were admin people, there were people from different departments other than the field staff who were supporting in the assessment. So talking about the improvement or continuous improvement, we were updating our work on a daily basis, if not on hourly basis, and this by very good communication among all of us. So we moved from the application, we improved it, we fixed we eliminated the waste in the application. So this saved us a lot of time.
Can you give an example of waste?
Yep, sure. So the area where the blast happened, it's a new area for us, because we're operating in the Bekaa Valley, which is around 1 hour something far from the location of the blast. We didn't know well the neighborhoods, the streets. Between brackets, in Lebanon, we don't have addresses, numbers, building numbers. We don't have it. So when I say eliminate waste, we recruited volunteers from the same area or nearby the area of the blast. These volunteers, they know the area well. They were guiding us to the affected or damaged building directly. So we didn't have to go through an area which the blast didn't affect it. So that's why we're going directly. This saved a lot of time, lot of money, because we didn't need to use our vehicles to move between the streets and the areas. So we're going by walk between building and building, and we were following the volunteers. And this gave us a good example actually about how the process is effective and how we are eliminating waste. Because if we didn't do this, the process wouldn't be effective as much as we did previously. So
Thank you. So
this what yeah. So this what we did what we did. Moving forward with the response and from the logistics point of view, we published a tender and we used the technology and the advertisement. So we used a platform for advertisement and we published the bid. We received 75 interested bidders and the 25 submitted their documents. Why we needed this number? Because the geo-split area is very big and we needed to be effective and we needed to respond quickly to the beneficiaries. So in our mind, before doing the advertisement for the bid, we wanted like at least 5-6 contractors to do the work. Once we received 25 bids, okay, this is beyond expectation. It's something very good for us. Now we can proceed and we can do our job effectively. And at the end, actually, the process went well. We started the response, and the duration was the time frame actually was very short, and we started helping the beneficiaries since the beginning until the end of the 2 phases. So we didn't stop helping the beneficiaries starting from phase 1 until phase 2, which is the reconstruction or rehabilitation.
Ilyas, can you give us some context on that performance? You're saying it was unbroken response, okay, and it was continuous coordination between the people in the field and your logistics team, and between the people in the field as well. You went straight to the need without unnecessary movements. I'm trying to summarize some of the things that you did. Now, can you compare that performance to what would have happened if you don't use lean? Give us an idea of the impact.
Yes, sure. First, there will be a delay for sure in our response. The waste will increase. And the example on that, the training that we did at the beginning of the for the volunteers, we created a groups on WhatsApp, including volunteers and Madair staff. So the request coming from the field was going directly to the right person, even though in the senior management team. So everyone was knowing what's going on the field, and whatever we were facing from issues, it was solved directly on the point.
So you did not wait for orders from your boss.
So somehow, yes, you're right, because it was a clear idea for everyone about each one what he's doing, and the brief at the end of the day. So it's like quick report, quick meeting, and it will be summary of what was going on through the day. So the senior management was always on the spot with everything.
Okay, so they were definitely involved. They were not absent, but they did not tell everybody what to do. This was like this was a joint effort, decision making close to the action.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I'll just before we move on, because we want to hear from Darine and from Abebe as well. Just summarize for us how that kind of working together, that kind of collaboration, that kind of information sharing, fast, how that what impact that had on your sense of teamwork, on the culture that exists in your Lebanese team.
Yes. So first, it created like huge motivation for the team. And what helped us actually is that even though the country director was in the field, was supporting the field staff, he was going on daily basis and he was joining teams in the field, was joining the volunteers. This impact empowered the staff and increased the efficiency of the work and also the productivity of the staff. And talking about the culture related to what we faced, actually, in general, we're supporting, like we like to help, and with the process that we used, this increased our response. It increased also our support. So the motivation part played really good support for everyone, including me as a logistics and security manager. Like at some points, you need motivation to continue, and I was getting it on daily basis, and I was transferring it to the staff.
Okay, so that motivation spreads.
Yeah.
And I know all of us in humanitarian work, we have good intentions, but are we empowered to act upon those good intentions? And in your case, that worked with these lean techniques. Thanks, Elias. That was great. Just to interrupt our panel discussion briefly, I know that we have 2 questions in the pipeline, one from Catherine, who is interested, who has a question for Robert. I'll get to that in a moment, and one from Andrew, which is more general about lean. To our listeners, I haven't forgotten about your questions, but I would just suggest we listen to the stories from the field, and then we will be able to discuss the questions in general at the end. So I would, with that, I'd like to ask Doreen, who works in Congo. She's a procurement expert and procuring food and other commodities to the best of my knowledge. Doreen, why don't you tell us how you applied lean to your work there?
Before I talk about lean, I want to introduce how I got in contact with lean. I was working with World Vision as supply chain and administration manager, and we didn't have any idea of what is lean or anything. We would just do our normal procurement procedures according to standard operation procedure and the policies in place. So it reached a point where there was a lot of delays in meeting the program's demands in terms of procurement, paying the suppliers. We had issues with fraud audit queries that were emanating from the way we were doing procurement. So Andrew trained us, introduced us to the Lean and Six Sigma. We got trained, and after the training, we now, with the support of the management, because the initiative started from the regional office as an idea, and they chose Burundi as a pilot because we had a small budget and it was easy to implement and see if it can work. Then we went through the trainings, and as one of the projects, we had one project called Plan to Procure to Pay. That's what was the title of the project. I was the project manager for this program, and the country director and other staff team members were supporting. So we initially analyzed the processes, what we have been doing, and we realized we have been wasting a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of energy, and we embarked in the process of analyzing what can we do better, what can we change, what can we eliminate completely, because there were a lot of redundancies in what we were doing. Like one document has to be signed by 5 or 4 people on the same information. and or from the field, a driver has to take 200 kilometers to just come and get purchase requisition approved, including cost for fuel and hotels and the time the driver will not be at the office. And our team were running up and down, purchasing one pen today. Tomorrow you get another call. Oh, actually, by the way, I need a pen as well. So it was very hectic and staff were just running all over the place. We didn't have time to take our leave days and there was a lot of burnout. So after going through the training, we started doing the actual analysis of the processes. We mapped them out with of course, the support of Andrew Paris as our supervisor. So we mapped the processes and we submitted to the management a full report of things that we have analyzed, and that was including the time and money we were wasting in terms of cash by continuing doing the same processes as we have been doing. After that, the management sat down and they approved the changes that we suggested, and we started implementing the changes. And with that, we put in place framework agreements. We did market surveys to update the prices. And we also automated the system because it was still on paper. It was a paper-based system. But later on, after we have agreed on the process, we worked with the IT team to automate the process. And later, we also, it was presented to be as for other offices to take the same processes and analyze their procurement processes. Actually, on only this pilot project, we were able to save $140,000 US, which was the cost of another like 6 classroom primary school. And we reduced the construction time by 50%, whereby you would have started the construction and the donor expects you to stay in the timeline of the execution of the program. But because there was no, the process was wrong, you even have carryover, you have overspending, you have underspending. And it was just as hectic for us as it was for finance to control the budget, to respond. They would just call in the project manager, or the donor will ask for a report, and it's just explaining. The only explanation will be procurement delays, and that was the only explanation of variances. When a project is overspent, they will just blame it to procurement, and that was the common language. So after doing this analysis, we realized we have been buying stuff which were not even needed. We have been spending money where we were like meant to just use what we have. We were not able to control the stock, to manage the stock of items we had. So at this point, after we have done all this analysis, we realized really what has been going wrong. And we concluded that it was the first to be applied in an NGO. And after that, we realized lean can be applied in a non-profit. So the impacts were very significant. We had all this budget saved. That means you reach more people. As Andrew said, it's about the people. If you can buy one pen for one child to go to school, and you save $140,000 US, you realize how much you can accomplish in the field. So, and the time also, and also the trust that the donor had. All the time we were having these issues of control, audits, all the time they are asking why this document is approved on a date which is different from the time things were purchased, and we had no explanation, because they will maybe just bring it for approval and get it lost, and you have to just prepare another document and backdate it, which would raise issues, or maybe someone with bad intention can do an authorized transaction because it's just a paper, and because it will be just putting dates, and we don't know, we don't have all the people who are authorized to sign in one place. So all these things were really improved after we had put in place, we analyzed, and we had this project in place. Also, another important thing was that our suppliers would even have 1 year without being paid. And on a business perspective, you understand that if you have supplied somewhere, you have already given your goods or services, then after 1 year, they haven't paid you because someone lost the purchase requisition, or a signature were missing, and the finance are asking questions, and someone is blaming someone for not doing what they're supposed to do. And all these things reduced really, and we actually had a very good relationship with suppliers because it has improved a lot. We had to cut that to 7 days. If someone has supplied his goods or services, in 7 days, you are able to pay the vendor. So, and it's very well followed to the point that even we reduced considerably the audit queries that we were getting at the time. Yeah, that's the important thing. And also the blame game changed completely.
The blame game
And
changed.
one thing I'm glad about that, yes, it didn't stop with procurement. After we implemented this process in procurement, it got to other departments, administration processes, sponsorship processes, and even human resources processes that Abebe will be talking about. So it's really something that has changed the way World Vision does business. I think even now they have continued to improve it again and again, to the point that recently I even saw World Vision Ghana looking for a staff to do the procurement to pay, which is actually a result of that pilot we did. So it works. People, we were reluctant in the humanitarian setting, thinking that we cannot apply anything from the industrial or manufacturing companies and expect it to work in a humanitarian setting. But when we understood that our customers are the beneficiaries we serve, and that they deserve to have better services, because the donors give us money. We are channels to convey the money to the beneficiaries. And whenever we give them poor services, whenever a project fails, we have failed the beneficiaries, and they may not be able to talk directly to the donor, but when there are evaluations and feedback mechanism in place, the donor will get to know how a certain organization is performing. That's how we were able to gain trust from maybe 3 area development programs to what they have now, which is more than 10, or even almost covering 9 or 10 area development programs. It was a success, and Andrew Paris will attest to this, that it has really helped a lot in terms of getting the value for money, and also improving a lot in the humanitarian sector.
Thank you for
yeah.
that. Doreen, I'm sorry to interrupt here because we want to give Abebe, and you've described it so well from beginning to end. What I learned from you is that you can come into, just as any organization can go into a spiral downward. And when things don't work, people think they don't work. They lose pride and trust in themselves. And you're describing an organization that somehow, through lean and continuous improvement, took control of their system instead of their system controlling them, and got into a spiral upward of performance. So you improved one area, that started to improve another area. And so it went. So I'll just summarize. I mean, you've already done so. 140,000 US dollars saved and can be used better. 50% time reduced in construction, improvement in donor trusts and audit results, and definitely pride. I can hear in your voice the pride that you feel in the achievement. You worked with an expert, but the knowledge came from the organization, correct? It wasn't Andrew telling you what to solve. It was you and your colleagues fixing your own system.
Yes.
With that compelling story of procurement improvements, and I think we all know about the blame game, and we all know about the firefighting that happens in a dysfunctional system. And you're describing, once you get on the spiral upwards, things start to work. So Abebe, can you tell us about how it worked in your HR project?
Thank you.
And
can you hear me well?
To our listeners, we'll get to your questions right after Abebe.
Thank you. So I'm here to share some.
Abebe, we can't hear you. Can you get closer to your microphone?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry for that. So I will add one more story related to lean management in process improvement projects, among several projects we did in our office in East Africa. I will pick one.
Abebe, we'll have to ask you to get a little louder. We don't want to miss it.
Okay. I'm sorry for that. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. I was saying I'm here to add one more story on lean management process improvement projects that we have done in our offices. I have just picked one of those projects, recruitment process. I have chosen this because I was part of it, and also it is so much related to my role. So lean was, just as a background, lean was introduced in our offices in East Africa in 2012 when Andrew came to the region, to help our region, to train employees and leadership on process improvement. I was one of the trainees who happened to be a lean team to design a process improvement project on recruitment. I will first share the story to the audience here, and then we'll probably discuss more on how this process improvement changes have impacted organization in terms of transforming relationships, organizational culture, and leadership style, and even in terms of increasing impact. This story is important as the change in the process has impacted employees' motivation, empowerment, leadership styles, organizational culture, as I said, and performance of individuals in the organization. I believe it is worth telling. Here is a story. The recruitment process. We had this practice before lean, which has a lot of problems. So we brought stakeholders, employees, leaders concerned to brainstorm on the problems of this process, recruitment process. So we have identified key problems, and also we are able to identify opportunities that we can improve in the area of recruitment process. So that happens through brainstorming with not only with HR staff, but with stakeholders. So the problems identified, the key problems identified, and through the brainstorming with the stakeholders, as I say, were number one, the process is long. It was long and time consuming. And also it was complex and cost us too much. And it was not done right. And it was also exhaustive. The process was exhaustive, employees were exhausted. And we also understood that this negatively impacted program implementation, which is the core function for humanitarian organization. So it was considered recruitment. Recruitment by itself alone was considered one of the causes for underspending, imagine. So this was the problems identified. We didn't stop on identifying the problems. As a matter of lean thinking, the philosophy of lean encourages us to dig into root cause. So the root cause in the recruitment process identified were just two. Too many steps in the process, too many steps. Number two, too bureaucratic due to too many decision points again. So we have, after identifying the root causes, we focused on solving the root causes as a team. The solution never comes from the leadership. It is the team, the employees themselves. So what we have agreed is, before even trying to change anything, we have agreed to have one common vision as employees. The vision, I remember, by then was vision of excellence through lean. The vision, let me read for you the vision we had. Recruitment process brings quality staff who are committed to excellence in execution. That was the vision. With this common vision, we have committed ourselves to really get into that vision. So what are the changes we made as a result of this commitment? Were like, number one, shorter and faster recruitment process was in place, which means the root causes were addressed. It's not possible to explain how that was done, but we have applied Lean Six Sigma methodology skills, different tools. The second change we made was process steps reduced significantly. And the third change that we have achieved was decision points reduced significantly, which means we have introduced decentralization of decision making, which will bring us later in our discussion to empowerment of employees. Decentralization of decision making was in place. And this required actually change of policies and guidelines and all that as a result of the changes made. Approval levels and new templates were prepared to eliminate non-value adding steps. In every process, we have value adding steps and non-value adding steps. And of course, non-value adding steps are, according to Lean, it's waste. And Lean basically is elimination of waste. So we eliminated non-value adding steps. Of course, all non-value adding steps cannot be eliminated because some non-value adding steps may be required by law, by regulation, and all that. So we cannot eliminate non-value adding steps. In fact, they are non-value adding to customers, but they may be important. So with all this process change, the new reality we have come up is recruitment process from start to end takes less than 42 days on average. 42 days on average. I will give you some details comparing the scenario before Lean and after Lean. It is now possible to attract competent and highly skilled candidates from the market. Look, the impact, it is huge. So in summary, the process for hiring, from hiring point, hiring request to report, before Lean, it was 130 days, 130. After Lean implementation, it has reduced only to 42 days, which is, of course, 81% reduction. And in terms of process steps, which I have mentioned as root causes, we had 29 steps before Lean. After Lean,
we got only 60 steps to be important, 60 steps, which is 45% reduction. In terms of decision-making points, decisions were made at different levels 10 times in the recruitment process. Now, after implementation of Lean, we came up only 4 times. The decision point is 4. So we don't need 10 times. We don't need all these steps to be made. So it's only 4, which is, imagine, 60% reduction. So this was, the process improvement project result. Maybe for the benefit of audience, let me add a few things which approach we took, so that they understand how this was possible to be achieved. We emphasized on Lean methodology promotion. Thanks to Andrew, he gave us a theoretical framework on Lean management. So that was also what we did. Promotion of Lean. Promotion of Lean, we focused also, we learned to see processes through the customer's eyes. This is a paradigm shift. We traditionally, conventionally, we define process ourselves. We see in our own eyes. Now we say, no, process should be built, process should be determined, the values must be determined by customers themselves. So in a value definition concept, customer, we have agreed that we have realized that customer is the ultimate value determiner. And the other second point we in terms of approach we followed was training. We trained leaders and employees, which was important. Lean teams were trained in different Six Sigma Lean skills. Not all employees, but team tasked for process improvement were trained with Six Sigma. Projects were designed, led by trained employees by themselves. So there is this value addition concept, which I have already mentioned. I don't want to repeat that. That's also part of the approach, identifying value addition. Value addition means any step that a customer is willing to pay. In our case, donors are our customers. The children we serve are our customers. So the community, does the community will to pay for this process? So that is the question we had. Required non-value added, waste, as I said, except required non-value adding steps, non-value adding steps were removed. Doing this, in this journey of implementing the project, we have learned, or we have come up with key milestones in process improvement. This is a small project as you can see, but the impact was huge. The milestones, number one is senior leaders commit and engage resources. So what do I mean by that? Leaders have come to catch the vision for process excellence. They were able to prioritize process improvement. They measure it, they preach it, they require it, they practice it, they share it. And they use process improvement to help achieve strategic objectives. Of course, any objective in process improvement should be aligned to strategic objectives of the organization. The second milestone was train and mentor process improvers. Leaders are not there in lean thinking to improve process. Employees are there to improve process. So that is also a concept of empowerment. So we train and mentor employees to be process improvers by themselves. So the third milestone to be mentioned here is we identified key process with measured strategic impact. We cannot do every process. We identify key ones, we prioritize, we design projects, we measure and report impact. And finally, the important milestone in our project was engaging entire workforce in process improvement. This is very important. It's not an expert thing. We don't need experts to come and solve problems. It has to become a culture where all staff, workforce is engaged in process improvement, so that continuous improvement will be a culture. All processes, not single process, one process, all staff improving, not few leaders or key persons. So I think with that, this is all about the story related to project process improvement on recruitment. Then later, maybe we can discuss how this really impacted performance and leadership and organizational culture as well. Thank you.